Folks, we're back. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas. Yes, I said Jim Jonas, with Veterans in Politics. Today we're going to have Brandon Davis, candidate for Nevada Assembly District number 34. But before we get to Mr. Davis, Jim, you have any rants? And welcome back.
Not actually any rants. I just, sorry that I was gone that long, but I enjoyed every second of Wyoming. I really think that everybody that lives in the city should actually go visit Wyoming. It's just, it brought me back to my childhood.
Yeah.
You know, it's not for everybody, right?
Are you growing a beard? I just need to know.
A little bit.
Because that's not even a weekend shadow. That's
Right.
like more of a week.
Right.
A week shadow.
No, it was just really fun. Like, I enjoyed driving 4-wheel drive pickups and driving through mud and 4-wheel drives and being able to operate heavy equipment and digging for dinosaur bones and gathering cattle and all that stuff was actually really fun to me. Now, it's not for everybody. I get that. But if that's something you want to do and want to experience, like, I just want to give appreciation to my cousin, Jake Harris.
Folks, we're back again. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jones with Veterans in Politics. We have our Brandon Davis, candidate for Nevada Assembly District number 34. We had some type of technical difficulty the first time, but we're going to try it again. Jim, do you have any rants?
No, not any rants. I just want to thank my Uncle Mike and cousin Jess Harris for an amazing experience out in Wyoming. Well, because we had technical difficulties, I'll get more into it in another broadcast, and Steve Sanson and I will get together on that. Because I don't want to take more time away from our guest. So I just want to say that I just want to leave it as this. For my part, is that Wyoming changed my life.
Very good.
Yeah, and it was an experience I'll never forget. So anyway, right now I'll just shut up and turn it over to Steve, and then we'll get to our guest.
Thank you, Jim.
Yep.
Mr. Davis, how you doing today, sir?
I'm well. Thank you for having me back here.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Tell us about yourself.
Yeah. So born and raised in a blue-collar factory town in northern Illinois. Low socioeconomic background. Son of No, but a single parent. Mom raised a young man by herself, and dad wasn't around and rehab.
You the only child?
Only child, yeah.
Okay.
So not easy beginnings, but learned at a young age to fight.
Humble beginnings, right?
Yeah, humble, and learned at a young age you got to fight for everything that you have, and accountability and taking responsibility and not playing into the victim mentality, stuff like that. So, involved in the arts. Was fortunate to kind of be in that, through the upbringing and sports, and got myself into Southern Illinois University. Realized very quickly that my learning style was not meant for college.
What degree did you get?
I was in communications.
So you got a what?
Didn't get a good degree. I left early. My learning style was much different than sitting in a huge lecture hall for hours at a time with hundreds of other students, and so that was an early introduction for me into even things that we see in our current society now. That we're finding that that type of learning environment doesn't work for some.
Right.
And then I spent most of my 20s playing rock music across the country, living in a
I could tell last time you came on the show.
Yeah. Playing in a...
Did you have long hair?
I did, yeah. It looks very different.
Earring?
Yeah.
Oh.
And
what else you had?
I think I had a beard.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah, yeah, switching it up, which is good. But
when I saw you, Brandon, sorry to interrupt, but when I saw you the first time after you got all cleaned up, I thought John Walsh was looking for you.
yeah, it's a drastic change. You know, in me having only been around in kind of this political space, you know, here for a short amount of time, you know, I've spent my whole adult life kind of going in and out, you know, switching and growing it out and then cutting it off and kind of, you know, being flexible like that. But anyways, yeah, it was definitely a big change compared to, you know, when I was here last. But yeah, spent the 20s, you know, playing rock music and learning a lot of the skills that got me to the career that I'm in now, which is in communications, media, marketing, digital marketing. Obviously, you know, promoting a band or learning graphics for merchandise and, you know, advertising, marketing, all of that stuff kind of led me to where I'm at now. And I'm fortunate enough to, you know, have ownership in multiple businesses now, an entrepreneur, but in that marketing communication space.
Kind of business.
So my main thing is a digital marketing agency.
Okay.
So we help brands grow, work with a lot of law firms and service-based businesses and help them to gain more visibility, traction, awareness online.
So you should be doing that for your campaign, right?
Yeah, no, we've got a lot of insight to bring to the campaign and which is good.
So when you talk about your campaign and you're focused on digital marketing, which is good, right? Because you need that in a political campaign. But what do you actually bring to the people? Like, why is it that you want to run for office? And what is it specifically that you think you can bring to the populace to better their lives?
Yeah, that's a great question because that's what it's all about at the end of the day. It's not about what I want; it's about what is most important to the people and what we can provide as a servant. I think that.
Okay,
kinda,
so let me stop you right there, though. Like, why is it that you think that government? You're seeking a government office. So how is it that government can provide that better than people themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge advocate for less government and more a private side of things. So I think the private market in an overwhelming majority of places can provide a better service than the public. Let's just be clear on that. Okay. But as far as my capabilities, you know, obviously being a business owner, aware of accounting and bookkeeping and marketing and sales and research and data. You know, managing teams, being in a leadership position, all those different things. I think when you run and own a business and you manage it well, you inherently become knowledgeable to what a lot of things take to be in that type of position, especially in the legislature. You know, there's a lot of having to make, you know, decisions and work with people across the aisle, somebody that might think differently than you. Right. You know, there might be clients that we, you know, work with that we don't necessarily agree on all things, but we find ways to work together. There could be employees, same deal, but you find ways to get, you know, the ultimate goal accomplished, right? And to see it through. So I think that there's a lot of things there. You know, I've sat on national committees, I've sat on state boards. You know, there's a lot of different ways that working in groups, you know, understanding Robert's Rules of Order, you know, I mean, I could go on. There's lots of different ways that I've had that qualifies me to at least understand what's going on in the state legislature. And me personally, I'm just passionate about policy. I mean, I read NRS statutes, you know, through legislative sessions. I'm following along and, you know, have, you know, contributed in different ways to BDRs. And, you know, that's where I find that I'm actually genuinely interested. Right. So that was the one of the big reasons for deciding, you know, for the assembly, and parlay that with, you know, the current incumbent Democrat that's in my district as the chair of the Committee on Education in the Assembly. This race is perfect for me. I have a 6 and 8 year old attending a charter school in the district. I'm personally a product of public schools. You know, we see where our current education system is in our state. And as a huge advocate for, you know, a choice in education and allowing parents to make the decisions that are best for their for their children, I see that committee consistently blocks alternatives to the public system. And so for me, that fires me up and was definitely a reason for me to jump into the race.
How many times have you ran for public office?
This is my second.
Tell us about the first.
The first time was in the 2022 election. I was the Libertarian candidate for governor. An incredibly interesting experience. We'll put it that way. I got into that race because I felt that there was a need for a deep, fiscally responsible, deep individual liberty candidate that would fight for limited government, open markets, that would be a pro-business candidate, that would, defend Second Amendment rights and many different things. I have since seen that, Joe has done a really stand-up job. I'm pretty proud of what he's done. But so we ran that campaign. It was an incredible experience. I mean, we ended up going to 12 different counties across the state. We had no money. We had no endorsements, no backing. No PACs wanted to contribute to what we were doing. I even talked to data companies that we just wanted to run simple polling across the state, and they wouldn't work with us because we were not a Republican or Democrat. I mean, the media wouldn't talk with us. I mean, we got zero help, zero exposure, and still achieved the third highest vote total ever in the history of the state for a non-Democrat, non-Republican. So it's pretty amazing what we accomplished.
So are you a Republican or are you a Libertarian?
I think that's a wonderful question. In philosophy, I think there are a lot of libertarian, ideas that still kind of encompass who I am and in the ways that I look at the world. I've since switched to the Republican Party. I think is
Why? To win or because that's how you feel. That's what you are. You're a conservative or you're a libertarian.
I think definitely a libertarian in philosophy. As far as the political side of things, I'm a Republican. I think, I've had some time to learn a lot. I've been to Portland, Oregon and done research. I've, studied some different areas and aspects of kind of libertarian philosophy that I probably no longer hold. I'm more conservative on those topics. And so I think there's kind of somewhere in between. Being young and kind of being brought into that like Ron Paul revolution, kind of thing. I think there's a lot of folks that are my age that probably, went that route as well. But I think, I saw that there is not a viable pathway for a non-Democrat, non-Republican in the current environment that we have. And for me, who wants to make substantive change, for my kids, right? When you asked me that question earlier, why be involved in the political process, period. And to me, it's too important for my children. I want them to grow up in a freer society than when I did. And so for me to be able to have a seat at the table and accomplish those goals, the Republican Party is best suited for me.
Okay. Well, and I'm glad you asked that question, Stephen. Thank you for asking that. Because that's the issue that I have had for a number of years with the Libertarian Party is they're conservative on policy issues, but very liberal when it comes to social issues.
Mm-hmm.
Like Ron Paul said it himself, heroin should be legalized.
Yeah.
So how do you differentiate the two? Because and I'm not putting words in Steve's mouth, but for me personally, I've always said that like I think the Republican Party that I'm a part of is wrong when they say, okay, they're very conservative when it comes to national issues, but on social issues, they're very conservative.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not pro-choice for women. They're very conservative on social issues.
Yeah.
So how do you differentiate yourself on that?
Yeah, I mean the drug decriminalization kind of thing is a perfect thing to bring up, because in the last campaign I talked a lot about at one time just looking from the outside in, understanding that, of course, if we remove some of these things, you decrease the black market, you get people out of, cages, the whole thing. I personally went to Portland, Oregon, and talked with stakeholders in that community, walked around the streets and saw people shooting up heroin on the street right in front of you as you're walking past human defecation, and just saw just the complete disaster that has been. And I think that there's an understanding of, okay, on paper, if we were to do A, B, and C, right? This creates all of these different things, right? Yeah. But when it's implemented in our current environment, in our current society, we see it's been a failure. And so, I've kind of walked back some of the thoughts that I've had in that particular area, just because I've seen it with my own eyes. I mean, I've seen the research, I've seen the data, I've seen the visuals. So I think that there's a difference between saying, this would be great, and this is probably somewhere that we should strive to go to, but we're not ready. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the mental health resources. We don't have, all of these things. And I also don't think that the government should be paying for that. That should be something in the private side. I don't think that there's enough private sector, non-public sector, government, non-governmental agencies, organizations, nonprofits that can provide enough services to these folks if there was, a mass decriminalization, right? Not only that, these people, I'm telling you, I'm walking around and asking these questions. These people don't want that. This isn't about, and I think that's a lot of talking points of, the drug decrim, side of things is, they just need the help. They need the infrastructure. They need the care, right? I talked to, at least a dozen of these individuals that said, I don't want it, they don't want the mental health support.
I got a few back-to-back questions. Are you district number 34? Exactly where is that?
So that's going to be Lake Mead to Alta, Charleston, Wallapai to Jones. So in the heart of Summerlin, think, on the west, TPC Summerlin, the trails, the hills. On the far east, you're going to have, Rainbow, Buffalo, kind of that area. So it's a very diverse district. Again, you've got higher income areas, you've got lower socioeconomic areas, but it's a wonderful district.
So in 34, are there any other Republican candidates besides yourself for this race?
No.
So you're the only one?
The only one.
Okay. All right. Well, that might eliminate a whole lot of problems, because if there's another Republican that jumps in this race, people might question, you went from libertarian and now you're a Republican. Did you do that because you feel that you are a conservative candidate? Or did you do that because you recognize that a libertarian cannot win, and you jumped into Republican because that's best suit you? Mm-hmm. So a lot of people like to know that question.
Yeah, no, that's definitely something that have already run into, questions that we've already had, and that we're going to continue to have. And again, like you said, we hope we get to a point, because it's easier to fight the fight against, the incumbent Democrat with the full amount of funds and effort that we have, not having to go through a primary, which at the end of the day, that's what the goal is right? We need a Republican elected in Assembly District 34, period, right? But to answer your question, I think the biggest thing is one, that, views change. I think people kind of learn, right? And if you're not continually evolving and learning, you're staying stagnant, which is never a positive thing. So I've done, due diligence to really dive in and look at certain things, and really understand our society and understand human psychology and various other things, and know what's best for my kids and my business and various other things. So, people are going to say what they're going to say, but at the end of the day, you're not going to find somebody that's more pro-business, more limited government, more fiscally responsible, and work harder for the people of the Assembly District 34.
Because when you came on the show the last time, you had that hippie look, right? And you ran for governor as a libertarian candidate, and you were in the general election, and I voted for you, to be quite honest. because I put out everything I had to put out on the Republican candidate who's now governor, and everything on the former the gubernatorial candidate who's now governor. That's right, and the current governor who's Democrat, and I put everything that I had on him, and I put that out. And you're the only one that was left standing, so I voted for you based on the fact that I did the process of elimination. And I'm not a radical white right wing or a left wing anybody. I don't vote because you got an R in front of your name or because you have a D in front of your name. I vote because I feel that you're the best person to do the job. And a lot of people don't know how to do that because their ideology is too far left or too far right. You know, I like to be in the middle, like a judge, fair and balanced, right? Or a teacher, everybody has an A until they screw up on the test, right? So that's how I voted when I voted for you and any other candidate for that matter. And I just want to make sure that when you say you're a Republican, because I did a pro and con on myself, and I'm more R than I am D, although on domestic issues I'm more D, but on national global issues I'm more R. So I recognize myself as a Republican than a Democrat. But a lot of people can't move from that. They're just stuck R or D, regardless if the guy's an idiot or what, or if they're stupid. They don't even know what. I had candidates that come to me and say, running for assembly, and I ask them, where do you go to vote on bills if you're a Republican? If you're a legislator. And they told me on Washington and Las Vegas Boulevard, they didn't know that they had to go to Carson City. So, and these are stupid people, or either R or D, and I can't vote for somebody that's just stupid. So I like to vote for somebody that's intelligent and that's gonna do the will of the people. So when you went from lib to Republican, I want to make sure that you did that because that's how you feel and that's in your heart, not because you're being an opportunist. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of Republicans out there who would call somebody like that a rhino or whatever they want to use or whatever terminology they want to use. But I like to be smart when I vote. So convince me why, if I'm a hardcore Republican, right? Convince me, if there's another Republican that jumps in your race, because there might be, because there's still time, sure. Convince me why I should vote for you as my Republican candidate for Assembly District number 34.
Yeah, I've always, since early 20s and registered to vote, been kind of center right. That's kind of always where I've lived. My first time of registering, to vote at 22 was as a libertarian, because at that time for me, I didn't find myself fully represented in either of the other two major parties, and it was kind of like my Rage Against the Machine, fist in the air, like protest vote, so coming through that. But to answer your question, at the end of the day, you're not going to find somebody that's more staunch in Second Amendment rights. Period. A member of Gun Owners of America, member at Desert Sportsmen. I go shooting every weekend. Not going to find somebody that's more in favor of school choice and parental education or choice in education. You're not going to find somebody who's more fiscally responsible, removing barriers to allowing businesses to thrive and to grow. All of the things that are important to Republicans. You're not going to find somebody who's more on their side, period. So that's the argument. I think at the end of the day, somebody with a libertarian philosophy, and there's a lot of people, Thomas Massey, Rand Paul, we can go on.
The chairman.
What's that?
The chairman for the Clark County Republican Party used to be a libertarian.
Yeah, he talks about, kind of being excited about that Ron Paul movement when he was young, for sure. So there's a lot of people out there. We look at, I just got Andy Matthews' endorsement. I think a lot of people, and he got a large amount of even Democrat votes because he is that guy that, is that moderate right guy that is a stand-up, so having his...
And that's the only way you could win. That's how Lombardo became governor.
Right.
And that's how Stavros Anthony became lieutenant governor,
Correct.
because they got those D votes in the general election. And some people don't understand how that damn thing works, but
Right.
that's how it works. You see, we won 3 constitutional seats and we lost 3 constitutional seats. Why? Because a lot of D's came over to Lombardo's side and Stavros Anthony's side and Andy Matthews' side. That's why they won.
Yeah.
It wasn't because they got a whole shitload of Republican votes.
Yeah.
That's why they won, because a lot of D's crossed over and they voted for them. And people that are radical, they can't get out of their own way. They can't understand that. And once you understand the strategy, then you'll win races.
So
Absolutely.
and that's 100% correct, Steve. And I 100% agree with you. But then you also have to pivot the other way and go, well, there's certain Republicans, and I'm one of them, that believe that, like, if you're not a true Republican or socially conservative and and economically conservative, then you're not going to get my vote. So because you're going to still need those people too. Now, I understand the natural progress of society is to become more liberal. But at the same time, like, how are you going to convince me that is an economic conservative and a social conservative?
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to get my vote?
Yeah, again, I think anybody who understands what libertarian philosophy is and the teachings Frederick Hayek.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm going to interrupt on this point. So one of the issues that I have with libertarians in general, and I know you're running as a Republican, and I respect that,
Mm-hmm.
and I respect you a lot, but I'm just saying, like, on social issues where it's legalizing drugs and all this other social stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I have a problem with that personally, so I wouldn't vote for a libertarian because of that fact.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you convince me to vote for you?
Yeah, I think all the things that I hold in that libertarian philosophy kind of realm has to do with the economic side of things. I mean, again, you're not going to find a more limited government, constitutional based, fiscally responsible person than me. Period. And so if Republicans, Republican voters in my district want somebody who's going to go to Carson City and is going to be a champion and fight and pound the table for reducing the size and scope of government, reducing spending, reducing the intrusion of government in our lives, protecting our individual rights and liberties, you're not going to find one, period. So that's one. As far as the social side of things, I think we've talked about, I don't land on some of those, typical libertarian, far left leaning philosophies. I'm not for, some of the things that you see them talk about. So that's what it is. That's period, right? But you're not going to find somebody that is going to fight for Republican conservative economic ideals in Carson City than me.
So you said that you've been knocking on doors in 34.
Yeah.
What are the issues or concerns that people in 34 are saying is wrong and that they want to see you address?
Yeah, number one is education. Number one is education, hands down. Number two, they're pretty close.
How education? What about education?
People are worried about the safety of their children.
Shouldn't that be a school board issue?
I mean, I guess we could debate that and argue that, but
how would an assemblyman address that issue than a school board trustee?
Well, I think that there's restorative justice policies that have went through our legislature recently that we've seen to be a complete failure, right? So those are ways that we need to get rid of those and need to strip those completely. I think there's ways that you can legislate school districts to have certain accountability measures to make sure.
Break it up?
100%. I'm a huge advocate for breaking up, and I think we talked about that last time I'm here. I think municipalities should be able to opt out if they want to. I mean, I want to say the state of Idaho has like 117 school districts. Colorado has like 170. What are we doing with 17? There's there's no accountability. There's egregious spending and just complete loss of funds. So yeah, 100% break it apart, allow smaller scenarios to, again, more oversight, more accountability, understanding what's being spent, where it's going, getting rid of some of the egregious. I mean, we've increased our administrative costs over 2,000% over the last 2 decades. It's insane. So anyways, but that's the biggest thing is, again, parents are worried about the safety of their children, so we need to find ways to legislate, again, in creating laws that are going to create more accountability in our school systems, put more pressure on the school districts to adhere to those accountability measures, for sure. And the second thing I think that people, they're talking to us about is just the cost of things, how expensive things have gotten, inflation.
So as a assemblyman, what could you do to lower that?
I think, just coming from the understanding of the more that you reduce and get government out of business, the more things rise to the top. I mean, when there's more competition in the market. So we've got to find ways to reduce the amount of ways that government is restricting business. We see it in housing, we see it in healthcare, we see it in business. We see so many different ways that too much government has caused higher costs, less competition in the marketplace, which again is an indirect, it's simple economics. So I think that there's various ways that you can do that. I think removing the commerce tax would be the right move because, again, that creates more jobs. It takes burdens off of business. It allows more money to flow back to the employees. I mean, if you have millions of dollars that's just coming back to these companies, that's going to come down to employees and allow them to create raises and pay higher hourly rates. So, those are just a couple of ways off the top of my head that I think would be a great start.
What are the other concerns?
Safety in the communities just in general. I think
how would you address that as an assemblyman?
Yeah, again, more accountability. We have to stop letting criminals back out onto the streets.
And sorry, the reason why I'm pushing it that way is because you have candidates that has all these issues, and they're running for a position that can't even address them.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that when you say that, here are the issues in District Number 34, and maybe in Nevada as a whole, and here is how I could address it, running for this current elected position. Because there's a lot of people who say that they could address all these issues, and running for the position that they're running for, they can't address probably none or all of them. They probably can't even address none of them.
Yeah.
But that's why I'm asking you, as an assemblyman, how could you address that?
Yeah, we have to increase, not decrease, and this is obviously what we do, on the legislative side, is increase penalties for violent crimes. Period. Make sure that we are passing laws and legislation that is going to, keep violent offenders, multi-offenders, in jail. And we have to stop letting these people back out on the streets. We have to.
But we already have those laws on the books. The thing is, the judges are letting them go because a lot of the judges are legislating from the bench. So it's not that we don't already have, like immigration laws, for example. We have all these immigration laws on the books, gun laws. We have all these gun laws on the books, but we don't force them or we dictate what they are. If they say X, Y, and Z, then now we're starting putting our own, as an elected official, our own personal opinion into what the letter of the law says, and then we start making up our own law. Well, a lot of judges will say, well, that's not how I read the law.
Yeah.
That's not how I read the law. How else are you going to read it? It says, if a guy commit this crime, the guy goes to jail for 6 months. What do you mean? How are you not going to, how is it different? We need to put in different language or what? Because they're interpreted a lot differently than how it's written. How are you going to get around that?
That's a great question. Yeah, no, we need to elect better judges. I think voters need to be more informed and do their due diligence to make sure that we are electing judges that are going to, stand by the rule of the law. We've seen recently with, the traffic tickets and various different things have, we've decreased penalties on that, and we've seen traffic fatalities and crimes increase. It's simple. When we decrease the amount of ways that people can be held accountable for their actions, we see, worse off outcomes, period. So as I can only control what I can control. So once we get to Carson City, we're going to be a champion for, stiffer penalties for violent crimes, a champion for making sure that we're passing legislation and writing laws that are going to, make our streets safer and provide law enforcement officers with the support and the tools that they need to be successful to keep our neighborhoods and communities safe, while at the same time, making sure that we're holding them to a standard and accountable for their actions and rooting out the bad actors.
Well, since we brought up judges, are you inclined to have term limits for the judicial bench?
I am inclined, yeah.
Okay. Or would you be inclined to have something on the ballot that would give the public an opportunity to remove a judge if the judge runs unopposed?
Would that be like a ballot initiative type style thing?
Remove
or retain.
Yeah.
The court of public opinion can be an interesting space. So I would have to probably lean into more research on that before giving you a definitive yes or no. But it's one of those things that sounds intriguing. I like. But I think that's where voting comes in. I mean, if our voters are knowledgeable and they do their due diligence, and we've got enough data that shows us, or research that shows us, these judges and the records, that's where elections can have consequences, right? Both good and bad. So I'm not sure about what you're specifically referencing, but it's interesting to think about.
Okay, so I want to ask you this question then, because you're talking about the voters being informed. Mm-hmm. So if you're elected, what kind of outreach would you have to inform voters?
Yeah,
because that's something that's really important.
Agreed.
And it's something that I don't think our current legislators do properly. They don't inform the voters. I mean, obviously, they're trying to get them to vote for them to get reelected or get elected. I understand that because they want a job and they want to keep their job, and that's perfectly fine. But one of the things that always frustrates me about legislators is they always say, "Oh, I just love public service." Well, that's a bunch of BS. They don't. They want to keep their job.
Yeah.
Okay, and they want to have influence. So if you're elected, when you're elected, and what are you going to do to keep the voters informed on the issues that really matter to them?
Yeah, in our district is a perfect example of what you're talking about, because the incumbent Shannon Bilbray Axelrod that I'm running against, I've been in that district for over a decade now. And I go to the restaurants, I go to the stores, I volunteer at, Assistance League, a community thrift shop. I volunteer at my kids' school. I'm volunteering in the area. Like we've got, we're deep and rooted in that community, right? It's important. And I've never seen Shannon. I've yet to see her at any of these places. I ask people in my precinct when I'm knocking on their doors, do you know who your representative is? And none of them can answer that question. So currently we're seeing that the person that holds that office is not doing that, number one. Number two, as we're going through and we're talking to folks and not only asking for their vote, but getting them excited and encouraged to show up to the ballot box next year, I think, we need to continue our past our get out the vote campaign measures into, once we're elected for the next 2 years, to talk with folks and make sure that they understand. We're communicating with them through emails. I think Victoria Siemens done a wonderful job in her ward, regardless of what you think about, her. I think she's done a great job on staying involved with the constituents in her ward, right? She sends out emails. She does the small business Saturday thing. She's working in the area to make sure that people in her district know what's going on. Right. She's doing the Art in the Park stuff at Bruce Trent. I could go on. I could see myself doing something similar to where I'm continuously engaging and communicating with the people in that district, not only just as an olive branch, staying connected, But I think that having something that also says, hey, here's this, this, and this, you should know about this. I think that's important. It's a great idea.
And then the other thing I was going to ask you is, because obviously being in the legislature, it doesn't pay much money, right? So, but it's still very important. So how do you keep your day job, but still be able to communicate to your constituents? How do you balance the two? How would you do that if you were elected?
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate that my main career path is in a digital space. I mean, I can work remotely from anywhere. Most of what I do is either up in the cloud or it's on a computer. It's all very digital based. So I have that flexibility, which is great. And I have a great team of subcontractors that we work with to be able to project manage. So I can be flexible there. The ownership interests in the other two businesses that I have kind of are a bit self-sustained, and we've got great people helping with those as well. So I'm in a wonderful position that I can go to Carson City for 120 days or 150, whatever it is, if there's an extended scenario there, and be able to do the work that needs to be done and not have to worry about it affecting my current career. And that parlays into what we were just talking about, to be able to communicate with the constituents and the people in that district through the digital skills we have, utilizing social media and email marketing and text, all the different ways that we can keep them informed.
So once, if and when that you become elected to Assembly 34, do you have any committees that you would want to be on, and why?
Yeah, the education committee is the number one for me. We'll see. Obviously, coming in as a freshman into Carson City in the state legislature is it's not easy. We've seen. I talked with Danielle Gallant and some other folks that it was their first round in this last session, and it's tough. Especially when you're in the minority. Getting assigned to committees or being able to get specific information or getting any of your bills heard in committee is very tough. But the education would be the number one for me.
So speaking of committees, the chair of each committee has the power to kill a bill, and a lot of these legislators up there that are head of committees will kill a bill based on whoever is sponsoring the bill.
Yeah.
So if they don't like Brandon Davis, they're just going to kill it. It could be a wonderful bill. It could be a bill that's going to help better Nevada, but because Brandon Davis is sponsoring this bill, we're going to kill it.
Yeah.
I think that's the most immature thing that they could do, and always call Carson City fraternity group, because that's how they act, like a college fraternity, right? Do you think that they should change how they run committees? For example, why should the chair have that much power to just look at a bill and kill it without addressing it with the committee that they're chairing? Shouldn't the committee as a whole vote on what bills die and what bills go to the floor? What do you think? Or should the chair have that much power?
Yeah, no, I don't think the chair should have that much power. But it's, in all honesty, it's tough. Again, you've got a limited time frame, 120 days, and we see, 700, 800, bills come through, and they need to be sifted through and heard, in those committees. And I'm a huge advocate for, creating rules that allow certain amounts of time for each legislator to be able to review those bills. I don't like, the ways that things are crammed in at the last minute, right before sine die. I could go on, but I definitely don't think that one person should be able to dictate, a bill being heard or not being heard in a committee.
Jimmy, anything else, Mr. Davis?
No, the only other thing I would ask is, so obviously it's pretty tough with, as far as, and Steve brought up a good question, as far as committee chairman being able to kill or not. They basically can say, well, it's not going to be heard.
Yeah.
Well, so, there's a lot of things that go into it. So why honestly are you running?
To answer the questions, it's too important for my kids. You know, I talked about this earlier. I want the state to be better, freer, more economically diverse, stronger for my kids than it was when I had it, right? And so that's the reason that I'm doing it. But to go back to your question, that's why it's so important for Republicans to get out and vote. That's why it's so important for Republicans to vote for strong Republicans, right? You know, we go back to what we were talking about earlier.
Just let me interrupt you. I'm sorry. I apologize. But so define a strong Republican.
A strong Republican is somebody that's going to be a champion for, limited government, fiscal responsibility, and be a pro-business candidate and fight for all the things that Republicans
if you're running for office and you're talking about limited government, you're running for a government seat. Mm-hmm. Aren't you kind of like trying to get yourself out of a job?
Not necessarily. Again, there's an absolute need for government. I mean, I'm maybe a minarchist, not an anarchist, right? We're not going down that road, but there's different ways public works. But I think the size and scope of our government has grown too big, period. And I can argue that with anybody for hours and hours. And so I think that there's ways that we can, again, get more money back to everyday Nevadans by getting rid of some of the ways that we're spending, period. That's
so
what it is.
Give me some examples of what you have planned.
I mean, we spend millions of dollars to go to, nonprofit organizations. I mean, let's just start there, right? There was in the recent Christmas tree bill, that went through the legislative session. We doled out, millions of dollars, to these private organizations that basically just support Democrat candidates, right? So that's egregious. That's money that could be directly going back to everyday taxpayers.
And the people that are in the assembly and sit on these nonprofits vote for money to come to their nonprofits, which I think that's a huge conflict of interest.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's multiple ways that there's conflicts of interest. I mean, there's a separation of powers case going on right now that, that's been a thing that I'm hugely in favor of. Somebody who works in the public sector should not be able to sit in the legislature, and advocate for the exact thing that they're receiving public money and taxpayer money from. Anyways, but that's a whole other thing. But let me get back to what's most important is Republicans electing Republicans, because what we're facing right now is, a supermajority, right? Coming in. Governor Lombardo's 75 vetoes that just happened, those come right back up in the next legislative session. And if we don't have enough Republicans in the Senate and in the Assembly, those can all come right back and be passed. So it's important, regardless of like the scenario again, what you're talking about, where can I vote for this guy or can I? Period. You got to vote for Republican, and we need more balance, and in our legislature. Period.
So let me ask you one last question, and Steve and I go over this all the time because Steve he teases me all the time. Every time I say I have one last question, I usually have 5 more, but literally this is my last question. So when you say we need to elect more Republicans. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, veterans in politics, we're nonpartisan. Even though Steve and I are both registered Republicans, and I don't mean to speak for Steve, but sure. We are. So we tend to lean a little bit to the right. Why is it exactly that it's important to elect more Republicans? When you say that, can you define that for me?
Yeah, because right now we have a government in the state of Nevada that the scales are tipped in one direction. Okay. And that, when we see a balanced government, we see a gridlocked government. And when we see a gridlocked government, we see less bad bills. We see less bad spending. And so, again, we're already in a super minority in one house. In another, we're 1 seat away. So it's important that we elect Republicans, not only for the balance of government in our state, and to create a more fair system in our state, but also again, whether it's on the social side of things or it's egregious spending, responsibility in our finance side of things, it's just too important to not have more conservatives at the state legislature.
Okay. Well, Mr. Davis, did we cover everything that you wanted to cover?
Absolutely, yeah. I just encourage anybody that watches this, if you live in the district, to.
I'm gonna give you opportunity.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
Mark's gonna zoom in on you, and you could your closing remarks and your point of contact.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Good. Awesome. Yeah. So if you're watching this and you're in Assembly District 34, understand that this is a race that I'm passionate about, and we're definitely going to win it. So if you want to get some more information on what we're about, it's electbrandondavis.com, and we're on all the social stuff. We definitely look forward to seeing you. We're going to be out there knocking doors and making the calls and doing all the things. So that's what it is.
Well, Brandon, thank you for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, and good luck with you in your race.
Thank you.
Jim, welcome back. Folks, this is Brandon Davis, who's a candidate for Assembly District number 34. Go to his website. Did you mention a website?
I did, yeah.
Okay. Go to his website and learn more about him, and make an educated decision when you go to the voting booth. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jones for Veterans in Politics. Until next time.